You got to come over and have one of these in person. So yeah, Cordy's got a bunch of questions, and I am going to make something awesome. And right now, everyone is doubting that, so this will be even more fun for me. Hopefully, I don't get this so close to the ground that Harvey can do this. So if you've never done this before, Matt, have you seen this? You ever do this?
Have I ever done sous vide?
Sous vide?
I don't have the gear, but I've seen you do it.
First thing you do is set a little water bath in here, throw your steaks in, and then look at these. Take a look at that, John. Can you see that okay? These look absolutely horrible right now. They're like gray and nasty. They look nothing appealing whatsoever. But they're about to look really tasty. Most people do this wrong because they don't get them dry enough. But usually most people do this wrong because they don't do sous vide for steaks. This is like the only way to do it. You get it nice and dry so we can use my new toy. Cordy, what do you got for questions? Let's go through that. This is going to be boring.
I don't know. I'm fascinated. I think we're all interested in your steak technique, most importantly.
You know anything about this? Well, this is something most restaurants do, and you don't even hear about it. This is usually how they cook some of their steaks, or whenever you go to a wedding or something, they've got a bunch of different food and a lot of
it definitely makes it more idiot-proof.
You can't screw this thing up. You set this this temp right here at 135 for the steak, and you walk away for a couple hours, and it never gets cooked any hotter than that. So you can't really overdo it. And then there's nothing actually touching it, so it still is super, super moist in there. So
just don't serve it like that.
I've done these dozens of times. This is going to be really good. So
all right,
start with this porterhouse.
Let's get into some golf questions here. Here we go. Okay, golf tech. Is golf tech a system or method of teaching?
I've heard of golf tech before. I would probably tell you that golf tech is loaded with different systems and methods. So anyone who's teaching golf uses some sort of a system. Whether they can tell you that or not is a different story. But they're always starting with something. So, like example, if I didn't have a teaching system whatsoever, then you would swing, you'd hit a shot, and then I would start in like an arbitrary place. I wouldn't even choose what mattered. So if you hit a big slice, I might tell you, well, why don't you weaken your grip some so that you just slice it more or open the face more, or I might just tell you the way you walked through the door was weird. Like any of that would show you like a very non-systematic approach. So everyone who teaches golf has a system, and I'd start with that. And I remember having this conversation with a very large group of instructors at the PGA show in January. And when I asked the polling question of 300 golf pros, do you use a teaching system or not? About half of them said, no, I don't, which doesn't make any sense. I wish everybody could understand that that's just English and language, and that's how that's an important part of it. Now, within a system, that doesn't mean that everybody has to swing the same way. You're doing great, Harvey. Not everyone has to swing the same way, but there's some starting points and some commonalities and some things that people will look at. So, for example, our system, Golf Tech system, starts with where did you hit the ball? Or what are your problems, and what would you like to do different than that? You see this flamethrower here. This thing gets nice and hot, puts a good little sear on it, and this is going to make it taste really good and make it look like a steak you're used to seeing. So every conversation with a new student starts with why are you here? What do you want to do? What are you trying to get out of your golf lessons? And if you're taking a golf lesson and not starting that way, you're totally doing it wrong. Your coach needs to be able to adapt however they teach to the problems you have. So people come in and they just have golf problems. 96% of people who walk in for us slice. So we spend a predominant amount of our time teaching people not to slice. To do that, you have to understand the face is open to the path, learn the ball flight laws, and understand how that works, and then teach people how not to do that. So everything that you learn at Golf Tech will be based upon you and whatever your problems are. So we're not teaching everybody a cookie cutter method, which I think is where methods and systems get bad raps. So summary, every teacher should have a system to teach golf. There's just no exceptions in there. You have to. If you don't, you're just making stuff up, and you're just not being genuine on what it is you do every day. Now, if you teach everyone to do the exact same thing all the time, you're not really you have a very rigid system. Good boy. I know this is tough for you. Sit down. They have a very rigid system that way, and that's inappropriate because that's not going to help enough people. Your teaching system should be able to help anyone who walks through the door all the time and do that repeatedly. That's what you get at a golf tech coach. And with a golf tech lesson.
Matt, I feel like maybe the word model or system method has gotten a bad rap in the world of golf instruction. So this is an interesting conversation. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think when teachers talk to each other, there's all kinds of words that turn pejorative. The art of teaching versus the science of teaching, or somebody's a tech teacher, or somebody's a classic old school teacher. They just become labels to paint coaches with, and I think system has a lot of different meanings. It's taxonomy. It's what you call things. It's what you call different movements, different shots. I think it's an organizing theory, and I think Nick's right. Every teacher is systematic in their approach. I mean, there might be some freelancers out there, but I think if you ask most really good coaches, they would say, "Here's the order I do things. This is what I'm looking for, and this is where I'm trying to get to." And that's what
we have that debate. We have that debate online all the time. I like everything that you said in there, Matt, because it's all exactly how I'm viewing the world. The debate online about golf instructors all the time is I don't have a system. So my first question to all those instructors are, well, if someone comes to you and they have a problem, where do you start? They all have a very definitive answer. That's the start of a system. And unfortunately, the English language and not trying to be pigeonholed into something demonstrates that I suppose just coaches even being naive to the word system. And then over time, that has gotten such a bad rap through media, really, that if you have a system that you're teaching everybody,
it's all my fault.
It is your fault, Matt. It's totally your fault. Who else could it be?
I do think that coaches themselves through the years have used the terminology of using the actual word system as a way of marketing and selling something to a player, because I think there are plenty of players that are looking for answers, and they're looking for a systematic approach to playing the game. And
smart ones are for sure.
So if you're marketing against somebody or trying to market something different than another coach who says that they're coaching with a system, then you're going to call that system names. But
it is.
I mean, science is a system. I mean, the way you do an experiment is systematic. The way you run a study, the way you do market research, all that stuff is systematic. And I think what golfers really want to feel is that their coach is coming to them with a coherent approach to the swing, the way the swing works, but has a holistic approach to dealing with the person. Meaning they're not just treating everybody the same. They're looking at what's in front of them and figuring out the best way to incorporate new information into the person standing in front of them, not just the standard human being A.
Your system has to be lenient enough where anyone who walks through the door, you can help. And
well, it doesn't have to be.
Are so rigid and structured.
It doesn't have to be, but it's more useful if it is.
Right, it's more useful. That's why I think it should be. Like a lot of systems start with potential flaws in what the golfer is able to do. I think that's a poor place to start. Like you want to take the person who's in front of you and help them be awesome. And you can do that without having a rigid system. And if someone tells you there's only one way to do something, then you should also run away from those people. John, take a look at this. Tell me what you think. See when it jiggles like this, John? That's how that's supposed to look.
I can almost
now
taste.
For Christina and Mike out here,
I can almost taste the propane.
What they're doing today. Oh no, that's the beauty of that Searsol. That's the attachment that goes on that. It just takes all the propane smell and taste right out of it. This is gonna be a good one.
I was waiting for two different outcomes. The three potential outcomes were awesome steak, shatter the plate with the high heat torch, or light the performance fabric of your pants on fire.
Those are oven safe, and all of those were in the wheelhouse. All of that could have been done.
This is a
what do you like better
right now?
New York strip or filet?
Oh man,
Play.
Matt,
All right.
we're definitely getting the short end of this bargain right now.
That's
You guys
true.
have done this wrong. One of these days, you got to come do a show out here.
I don't even have a dog.
You see, Harvey? He's so happy right now. He
Oh,
just
man.
wishes he could have this. And then most people don't put a little salt on the end of it. That's step number
I can
one.
tell you
Try
that I've
this,
watched.
Mike.
I've
I
watched
need
a
your-
lot of.
We need your
coaches.
opinion. You've watched a lot of what?
I can tell you I've watched a lot of coaches give a lot of lessons, and
Do a
when
lot
you
of
look at
Q&A.
some extremely talented coaches that have a very strong concept of what I guess I would call it a unifying theory about what the golf swing should be. You could watch some of those coaches with those strong opinions and not even know what their underlying system is because they communicate it in real person language.
That's a great point.
I think the metaphor I always use is you'll like this, Nick. If you're sitting in your office and you're looking at your Mac, the screen on your Mac, the Mac has
I hate that thing.
But the Mac has a really intuitive, user-friendly operating. The operating system is hidden behind the wall of simplicity. You move the mouse and the cursor goes where you want it to go.
Yeah.
You don't get involved in a lot of writing out commands. Something that somebody on a PC might have to do a little more work to do. And some people prefer that interface. Some people prefer a PC type of interface. But those are separate conversations. The operating system is a separate conversation from what's forward facing for the player or for the person taking a lesson.
Yeah. Should be simple. Doesn't have to be complicated. You know everything that you want about golf, but doesn't mean that you need to tell everybody. Taking a break. What do you think? Did you get their reactions? That one's got a little balsamic vinegar in it. So you notice how it tastes a little dry aged. That's all it is.
What are we doing here, Matt? This is gosh.
You guys are doing it wrong.
We're just sitting here alone.
Pretty good medium rare right there.
All right, Nick, next question. You
What else
ready?
you got?
Hard hitting one here. You guys use a 2-sensor system. Can you get enough data from that 2-sensor system?
Great question. Oh yeah. Yes. So my friend Mike here from DU has been helping us with all this data that we collect too. So we've got millions of swings and this 2-sensor system. And I've seen that many times. You've got a sensor that sits on the top of your cervical spine. And then you have one that sits about where your tailbone's at. Those two data points, when you run amateur golfers through the tens of thousands that we've done, maybe it's hundreds of thousands now. It's hard to keep up with how many people we're doing this with. That the key separators of skill, knowing that we know everyone's handicap that walks in, we know how they move those two sensors when they swing, is enough to describe 23% of what separates skill levels. And that's done by professional mathematicians and biomechanists. Then that system itself was designed by Dr. Phil Cheatham, who's a friend of mine and an awesome guy. And he's looked at as like the 3D guru side of golf. So all the stars aligned pretty nicely, because although 23% of what separates skill level sounds like a small number, there is absolutely no one who's done anything like this at all. 23% dwarfs everything. So in time, I want to keep adding some more elaborate ways of measuring and have some more detail to what we do, which is what we're doing right now. That's why Mike's here working in our development bay on a special project that we'll actually talk about here in the next couple of weeks to identify more data points without markers. And throughout that, I think we can raise that 23% of what separates skill to closer to the end game is probably getting close to 80%. The rest will be short game. So that'll be a more challenging detail for us to get. But yes, those two sensors, awesome way to teach. I know that I've taught thousands of golf lessons like that and could teach for the rest of my life off just those two sensors that we have. Understanding where those should be throughout time and space is probably a piece that most teachers don't give enough detail about. I know when you come to Golf Tech for your coach education, mainly I think golf instructors and people who even play golf, or even sometimes a savvy commentator on TV, they'll understand how you should be standing at address or understand the top of the swing and maybe something at impact, but they're never detailed or objective enough, you know? So without the more detailed system, just with those two sensors, like how many degrees should you be turned when your arm is parallel to the ground in the backswing? How many degrees should you be tilted over? There's a forward and backward bend that we measure in every swing. All of those details have to be known by the coach so that we can send them back and know that they're going to give a great experience to anyone who walks in. So I see often the coaches that come in don't have enough detail to their system because they don't have the opportunity to use a system like what we have, those two sensors, and understand that everything in between all those points is really that's where like all the secret sauce is at anyway. So the two sensor system, not only is it more than adequate to teach golf, it's actually should be like a prereq to anyone who teaches golf. And unfortunately, because coaches see gears, which we have, they see force plates, have that. We have the pressure mats. We have, I have like two of everything here at headquarters already. I still find it more valuable to strap somebody in on a two sensor system and teach them how to play golf that way with my launch monitor, whether it's TrackMan or Foresight Quad. That's those are the most valuable pieces of equipment that we've got. Unfortunately, other teachers see like a picture of gears data. And I'm saying that's really cool, but I don't use it to teach golf lessons very frequently. Or they see a biomechanist who is an expert at measuring things, and they're learning about golf, and some of them are really, really skilled at that. And then they only look at those people as though that's the only way to measure is to be in a lab or to teach every lesson on a gear system. When it's really, that isn't exactly how it works at all. You should start with this two sensor system. Golf would be such a better game with just that.
What can you define that 23%?
And lots of fillet.
And lots of fillet. 23% skill separator. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so the difference between a 0 handicap and a 36% or 36 handicap is identified in that study. That's really what we put out as the correlative data, and you can see that across handicaps. But we know that the separators of skill between those golfers that are the 0s and the 36, we can identify about a quarter of that just from those two sensor systems. So if you do these systems, you make a swing like a 0, we've got a pretty good handle on how much better that'll make you than a 36 handicap.
Got it.
It's a good question. I don't get asked that one a whole lot, but that's put all those data points together side by side, and there's a difference between all of them. That math problem just comes out to 23% of the skill that someone has is separated by how they move from those two sensors.
Questions, comments from Mr. Rudy?
You have more?
Well, I think that I think the best coaches know that the difference, the delta in the numbers is what you're looking at. Whether you're looking at a two sensor system, a TrackMan, a quad, gears, you name it. It's understanding the differences between two measurements and which ones are important and which ones aren't. So, I mean, are there devices that can measure something more precisely? Sure. Are you better off looking at your swing in 3 dimensions and looking at it on video? Yes.
Yep.
But that is only true as far as the caliber of coaching you have working with you to be able to interpret the information. And I think
that's where you just nailed it right there, Matt. It's not the sophisticated tools that make it all come together. It's whether or not the teacher, who in most cases is guiding the scientist or the golfer, do they know what to do with the data in front of them? Having more doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. And I'm the first one to say I want it all, but I don't use it all. It's not necessary.
You know, in absolute terms, more is great, but without
try
context,
that strip,
you can't use it.
I made the pieces smaller this time for you too. I saw you over there trying to hoard all that. Harvey's good for leftovers.
I mean, you could spend time arm wrestling over if a TrackMan, for example, is 97% accurate or 99% accurate. And in certain circles,
that's insignificant.
In certain circles, that conversation is important. But for a 20 handicapper, where you're looking for broad trends in improvement, that number doesn't make it. That difference of 2 percentage points is not as meaningful as, hey, you used to you used to come, way the heck over the top this amount, and now you're coming over the top less. And here's the difference. Here's what the face angle was at impact before. Here's what it is now. And if it was 20 degrees difference, does it matter if it's 19 degrees or 21 degrees difference? No. What matters is the global trend in those measurements, and a coach who understands how the measurements work together.
You got it. So more isn't better, although I like more. More is what makes all these studies cool. So for us to raise the percentage of how we recognize, we know 23% of the skill separators between good players and bad, and how they move. To get that to 80, we need more data. That doesn't mean what we have isn't right. It's quite the opposite of that. It's really, really good. And specifically to that question about the two sensors, what those are really helping you do is identify where your pelvis and your shoulders are at, or your thorax, the upper part of your chest, your sternum. Knowing where that is a lot of you as a person. That's why those are so valuable. And then to compare a person to themselves, that's where those numbers are the most valuable.
Another big piece too that's important to point out is that any coach that tells you it's not important to know something better understand what all those things are before they make that
that's right
determination.
That's right.
Because if you say I'm not going to bother to learn what device X, device Y, or device Z does, but I'm going to blanketly toss them out as not important or meaningful to what you need.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not doing the minimum amount of due diligence somebody who coaches people should be doing.
Yeah.
I'll never forget a conversation I had with Randy Smith about that. He said, everybody thinks that I'm this anti-tech coach because I'm a old school coach, but he understands all of the technology because he knows that to be conversant with a modern player that wants to play college golf or tour golf, if that player comes and asks you a question about TrackMan numbers, you can be the person who says, well, I don't know, that doesn't matter. Or you can have an answer that's a little more sophisticated than that. That could be to say, maybe you don't need to be so concerned about these 5 over here, but if you have questions about these 3, I can give you a cogent answer and actually show you some coaching leadership as opposed to just shutting off some source of information that could potentially help the player.
Yeah, dismissal certainly no good. And you pretty well nailed that. I think all these measurement tools are awesome. They're also in their infancy as well, of having a good system to be able to use that. And you can't really just teach golf as a hobby. We have nothing but professional golf coaches. That's all they do for a living. They don't work at a golf shop. They don't have to run golf tournaments. Not that there's anything negative about that. We just don't have them do it. This is all they do is teach and fit. So their systems are very refined. We try to educate everyone as much as we can in as many tools as we can, but specifically the ones that we use the most often every day. And then they get really good at it because they practice for so long. They own that the use of a launch monitor, and they can tell you when your face is too open or too closed very quickly. And it isn't the quantity of tools that you need; it's just being really good with the ones you have. But I promise you, we have a private coach page, which is the busiest one on the internet. Cordy, I got to invite you to that one of these days. We have 15 to 20 posts a day at times of coaches being able to interact with one another. So the 700 or 800 of them that can get in there, really just talk to one another that way and share thoughts, ideas, and it helps keep the message very consistent, but one that is always improving as well. So that's one thing we're always priding ourselves on, is how to help everybody play better, but do that faster and do it more effectively and efficiently, and knowing that it's more repeatable as well. All that's just what we're doing all the time. Nothing that while we're using these two sensors right now, and I love those things. Like I said, I could teach like that forever. That is where I'm headed. I'm ready to keep moving up in the world, and let's go into some more detail, including some things about which muscles are moving and which ones are being used to apply the force to the club head. So that I think will be interesting as well. We're working on some really cool stuff.
Love it. Looks like your lunch service is dying down. I hear the birds circling overhead.
We let them go. Buzzards.
Concern for you there, your safety.
I got Harvey. He's protecting me.
Last question before we go,
Okay.
Nick, and I'm sure you could talk about this one all day, but referencing back to the Swing True study you guys did, this was Megan. She was asking, how does Golf Tech's teaching method, your Swing True study, compare to stack and tilt and or any other swing methods?
Oh, gotcha. Well, first I'd say that swing true study is nothing more than data. So we get the data from our full HEMA system, and we just talked about what that is. Then that data is stored in our internal databases, which is cool because that's how we're able to capture hundreds of thousands of different players, and eventually we'll get that to millions of golfers that we've measured and have stored. Then and that data exists in a database that I'm able to pull from all the time. It just sits up in Amazon's real cloud. It's really up there. You can see it today, John. See that one? It's in the Amazon cloud and it sits there. We can pull that data whenever we want. Then I just take the raw data and I hand that off to our friends at Denver University, which Mike's a part of that was just here. And then he does all the math. He does the math. He does the visualizations. He does the correlative coefficients for me. He handles all of it to ultimately make sure that we're acting in accordance to science. So none of this is my opinion. Nothing in Swing True is really because I said it should be a certain way. That is never going to be how this will work. Now, there are coaches out there that are trying to do something similar, but they don't have the scale, so that's challenging. But then my friends Andy Plummer and Mike Bennett, who the stack and tilt coaches, they are very clear about what it is that they teach, and what they teach is eerily similar to the data that we have. That isn't done on purpose. That's how it is. Other teachers really aren't as blatant about putting out exactly what they believe on all their shots and all the swing systems and their thoughts and beliefs. So I can say for sure that theirs is our data matches what they describe a swing to be very often, very frequently.
Awesome. That is good feedback. That Swing True study is, I mean, we reference it all the time here on the show. You pull up those graphs constantly, and I always find so much value in looking at that and seeing the ranges, the heat maps. Just such a cool way to visualize that. I think that's what separates Golf Tech.
I wish golf had more of that.
Yeah, like, well, so I mean, what's so interesting about you and so interesting about Golf Tech is the data you have available, how you can go through that, how you can use that to spot trends. That is absolutely fascinating and immensely valuable in this world of golf. So I think we need to keep diving in more. I want to learn more. I want you to keep pulling up graphs. I want you to keep sharing, because the more that we, talk about that, I think the better it is.
Yeah, golf needs more of that, quite honestly. It's been hundreds of years the game was taught by people who were really good at it, and then they'd write a book. Tons of really good players did that. Thousands and thousands of golfers read it and then disseminate that down amongst themselves and their friends. And that is really tough because unless you're measuring swings and you teach golf, you really don't know what people should be doing when they go play. You're guessing at best, or you tie a feel to whatever it is that you think is appropriate for people who have certain problems. That was an awful way to do it. If you could start over again, you would start with let's measure everyone. What do the good players do? What do the bad players do? And then let's teach everyone to do the good player things, still not forcing them into some little tiny box. But here is your book on golf. It'd be pretty small. It would be basically your Swing True pieces to get someone started. And then over time, you just would add chapters and layers of difficulty and technicality to it. So ultimately, you would know if you do this, you're more likely to get this positive result, instead of a feel that Ben Hogan or Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods might have had at the top of their swing, and then everyone just practices that. We're in like a big hole in the golf world because of how the game's just been taught for a long time. So I'm interested in really only talking about quantifiable data, theory that has some structure and actual words behind it, and that things are measurable. Because without that, I wouldn't be doing anything but contributing to the problem that way.
Awesome. Well, Nick, we'll let you clean up your lunch there and get back to it. Matt and I are gonna go find a bag of chips, I guess, in the pantry, and that'll be our lunch. So slightly
Jerf, Cordy, jerf. Real food, Cordy. Stick to the real food.
Oh, yes.
Harvey's ready for a plate.
Harvey's ready. Well, Nick, we'll be back next week. Thanks for I don't even know what to call this. I'm lost for words.
Los Pollos Hermanos. Two Brothers Chicken.
This could be a Discovery property, a Food Network show.
Oh,
I want a cut of it, Matt. I want a cut of it. Golf Pros that cook.
All right, everybody. We will see you all next week.
Later.
Matthew, thank you for hanging out with us. Nick,
Thanks for having me, fellas.
see everybody
Thanks,
soon.
Gordy. See you, Matt.